Disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes. These are conspiracy theories and shouldn't be taken seriously. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. What if everything you've been taught about the ancient world is, well, a lie? What if the story of human history, as presented in our textbooks, is not just incomplete but deliberately so? I've spent my life traveling the globe, speaking to those who guard the old ways, and what I've found is a gaping hole in our collective memory. There's a shadow cast over our past, obscuring a truth so profound it has the power to shatter the very foundations of our modern world. We're told our ancestors were primitive, stumbling through the dark ages of prehistory. But honestly, the evidence, carved into stone and whispered in myth, tells a different story entirely, a story of breathtaking sophistication and lost science. In this journey, we will pull back the curtain on 8 extraordinary civilizations, each a brilliant spark of light in the so-called primitive past. These aren't just collections of ruins and pottery shards, they are the fingerprints of forgotten giants. We will explore cultures that possess technologies so advanced, they rival, and in some cases, surpass our own. We'll examine evidence of free energy, genetic engineering, dimensional travel, and astronomical knowledge that mainstream archaeology simply cannot explain. They want you to believe these are myths, fantasies of a bygone age, but the secrets are there, hiding in plain sight, challenging the comfortable narrative we've been fed since childhood. Each of these lost empires holds a piece of a much larger puzzle, a hidden truth that has been intentionally suppressed for millennia. From the sunken cities of the Atlantic to the stargates of the Nile, from the buried temples of Anatolia to the Vimana-filled skies of ancient India, a common thread emerges, a thread that when pulled, unravels everything we think we know about who we are, where we come from, and what our true potential is. So join me as we embark on this quest to reclaim our lost heritage. The truth is waiting. Our journey begins where all great mysteries do, beneath the waves, in the realm of myth and legend. Atlantis. For centuries, mainstream academia has dismissed it as a simple fable, a cautionary tale invented by Plato. But what if Plato wasn't inventing a story? What if he was recording a memory of a real place, a magnificent island continent that was the seat of a global maritime civilization, one that predates all known cultures by thousands of years? The clues are scattered across the globe in the flood myths of over 500 cultures, all telling the same story of a great cataclysm that wiped the slate clean. The narrative we are sold is that our ancestors were hunter-gatherers, barely surviving. Yet, the sheer scale and precision of megalithic structures found worldwide point to a different reality. They speak of a guiding hand, a mother culture. Atlantis was not a primitive society of Bronze Age fishermen. It was the hub of a technologically advanced civilization, powered by a science we are only just beginning to rediscover. Their society was built upon an understanding of the fundamental forces of the cosmos, of the very fabric of reality itself. They didn't burn fossil fuels, they harnessed the limitless energy of the universe. This power source, which ancient texts refer to as vril or ether, was channeled through immense crystals. These weren't just decorative stones, they were sophisticated technological devices, precision cut and tuned to resonate with the Earth's natural frequencies. These crystalline structures formed a planetary grid, providing wireless power, light, and healing energy to its people. They mastered vibrational science, levitating massive stone blocks with sound and creating structures that were in perfect harmony with the planet. This was a civilization that understood that the universe is conscious, that energy and thought are intertwined, but how could such a magnificent empire simply vanish without a trace? The orthodox explanation, a volcanic eruption or an earthquake, feels woefully inadequate. It doesn't account for the sheer totality of its disappearance. The secret lies not in a physical destruction but in a metaphysical one. The Atlanteans were masters of frequency and vibration. They understood that reality is not fixed, but a symphony of intersecting dimensions, each vibrating at a different rate. Their technology was inextricably linked to this cosmic harmony. The fall of Atlantis was not caused by a flood of water but by a shift in cosmic energy. A cataclysmic event, perhaps a solar flare or a polar shift, triggered a global frequency change. The very vibrational state of the planet was altered. The Atlantean power grid tuned to the old frequency catastrophically overloaded. The resulting resonance cascade didn't just sink their cities, It literally phased their entire civilization out of our perceptible reality. It shifted them into a different dimensional plane, leaving behind only echoes and whispers. Imagine a radio dial. Atlantis was tuned to one station, and then a solar cataclysm violently turned the knob. We are now on a different frequency, unable to perceive what is still there, vibrating just outside our limited sensory range. They are not gone. They are simply out of phase. The survivors of this event, scattered across the globe, carried with them the fragmented knowledge of this catastrophe, a memory that would become the foundation for the world's great flood myths. This is the first crucial piece of the puzzle, the idea that entire civilizations can exist in dimensions parallel to our own, accessible only through a shift in consciousness or frequency. The knowledge of Atlantis wasn't entirely lost. It was preserved by a secret brotherhood, the Keepers of the Flame, who ensured that one day, when humanity was ready, we could retune the dial and reconnect with our forgotten ancestors. The memory is encoded in our DNA, waiting to be unlocked. We now travel from the depths of the Atlantic to the sun-scorched sands of North Africa, to a land steeped in a mystery that has captivated humanity for millennia: Egypt. The official story tells us of pharaohs and slaves building monumental tombs with copper chisels and brute force. It's a story that insults our intelligence and defies the very laws of physics. The Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure of 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons, aligned to true north with an accuracy we can't replicate today. This was not a tomb, it was a machine. The Giza Plateau is a masterclass in sacred geometry and geological engineering. The pyramids are not randomly placed. They are part of a vast complex, a power plant of immense capability. Built on a nexus of telluric currents, the limestone casing and granite chambers were designed to harness the planet's natural energies. They functioned as resonant cavities, converting tectonic vibrations into microwave energy, broadcasting it wirelessly across the land. This was the true purpose of the obelisks. They were receivers, drawing power from this atmospheric grid. This is the lost science of the ancients. And then there is the Sphinx. Mainstream Egyptology dates it to around 2500 BC, attributing it to the pharaoh Khafra. But look closely at the evidence they ignore. The deep vertical erosion on its body is not the work of wind and sand, it is the unmistakable signature of thousands of years of heavy rainfall. Geologists have confirmed this, placing its true age at over 12,000 years old, deep within the last ice age, long before the supposed dawn of Egyptian civilization. It is a silent sentinel, a relic from the time of the flood, a time of Atlantis. Who then were the true architects of this ancient technological marvel? The Egyptians themselves give us the answer in their own texts, in the stories they carved on their temple walls. They speak of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, a lineage of wise and powerful beings who reigned for thousands of years before the first human pharaohs. They speak of gods who came from the stars, who walked among men and taught them the arts of civilization. These were not mythological figures, they were real beings. The secret of Egypt is a story of contact and inheritance. The ruling elite, the priest-scientists and pharaohs, were not entirely human. They were the product of a sophisticated genetic program, hybrid beings who carried the bloodline of these extraterrestrial guides. This is why they practiced mummification, not to preserve the body for a simple afterlife, but to preserve the unique genetic code that allowed them to interface with their technology and communicate with their celestial ancestors. They were the bridge between worlds. Their gods were not ethereal spirits but physical beings from other dimensions or star systems. The temple reliefs depicting figures with elongated skulls, strange animal heads and holding objects like the Ankh and Djed pillar are not symbolic fantasies, they are literal depictions. The Ankh was a key, a vibrational tuning device. The Djed pillar was a representation of the human spine and chakra system, but also a technological capacitor, a source of stability and power. They were using tools we cannot comprehend. The greatest secret they guarded was the technology of transit. The sarcophagi in the pyramids were not for burials, they were resonance chambers. The initiate, a hybrid pharaoh, would lie inside, and through intense meditation and sonic frequencies generated by the pyramid itself, they could raise their consciousness, their vibrational state, to a level where they could traverse dimensions. These were not tombs, they were stargates. They were ascension machines. allowing travel between the physical and spiritual realms between Earth and the stars. This is the legacy the Sphinx guards, a truth waiting to be reawakened. Our path now leads us to the Fertile Crescent, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, to the cradle of civilization itself, Sumeria. Here, around 6,000 years ago, society seemed to explode out of nowhere. Suddenly, we see the invention of writing, law, agriculture, astronomy, and complex mathematics. Mainstream history credits the Sumerians with a miraculous, spontaneous leap in intelligence, but the Sumerians themselves tell a very different and far more disturbing story. A story not of invention, but of instruction. Etched into thousands of clay cuneiform tablets, the world's first written records is a detailed account of their origins. They write of gods they called the Anunnaki, a word that translates to those who from heaven to earth came. These were not spiritual deities to be worshipped, but physical, flesh and blood beings who descended from the heavens in great skyships. Their leader, Enki, and their king, Anu, ruled from a planet they called Nibiru, a world with a vast elliptical orbit that brought it into our solar system every 3,600 years. According to these ancient texts, which predate the Bible by thousands of years, the Anunnaki came to Earth for a specific purpose, to mine gold, not for wealth or decoration, but for a far more critical reason. Their home planet, Nibiru, was suffering an atmospheric crisis, and they needed vast quantities of monatomic gold to create a fine powder to suspend in their atmosphere, reflecting sunlight and saving their world. It was a desperate act of geoengineering on a planetary scale. The initial mining operation was carried out by the Anunnaki themselves, but the work was arduous and led to a revolt among their working class. To solve this labor crisis, their chief scientist Enki proposed a radical solution. He suggested they create a primitive worker, a slave race, to do the mining for them. They would take the existing hominids on Earth, what we now call Homo erectus, and upgrade them, using their own Anunnaki DNA to jumpstart the evolutionary process. This is the forbidden secret locked within the cuneiform tablets, a secret that completely rewrites the story of human evolution. The tablets of Sumeria describe in stunning detail a process of genetic engineering. They speak of mixing the essence of the Anunnaki with the clay of the earth. They describe creating the first human, the Adamu, in a laboratory. This isn't myth, it's a biological report. It's an account of genetic tampering that predates Darwin's theory of slow, gradual evolution by 5 millennia. We see this reflected in the sudden appearance of Homo sapiens in the fossil record, a missing link that has puzzled scientists for decades. It wasn't a missing link, it was a quantum leap, an artificial upgrade. The Sumerian king lists document the reigns of these Anunnaki rulers on Earth, lasting for tens of thousands of years, followed by the reigns of human kings who were granted dominion. The stories of the Garden of Eden, the creation of Adam and Eve, and the Great Flood were not first told in the Bible. They are direct, watered-down copies of the far older and more detailed Sumerian accounts. The implications are staggering. We are not the pinnacle of natural evolution on this planet. We are a hybrid race, engineered for a purpose. Our creators gave us consciousness, but they also shackled us, building limitations into our genetic code to keep us docile and subservient. They are the gods of antiquity, the powerful beings who ruled our world and shaped our destiny, leaving us with a fragmented memory of our true cosmic origins. The truth of our engineered past is the key to unlocking our future potential. We now venture east, to the Indian subcontinent, home to one of the most ancient and spiritually profound cultures on Earth. The Vedic civilization of ancient India presents, honestly, a stunning paradox. On one hand, it's the source of deep philosophical and spiritual traditions, but on the other, its foundational texts like the Vedas, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana read less like religious scripture and more like advanced scientific and military manuals from, well, a lost technological age. These texts, written in Sanskrit thousands of years ago, are just filled with breathtakingly detailed descriptions of technologies that really shouldn't have existed in the ancient world. They speak of vimanas, sophisticated flying machines of various shapes and sizes, and these were not just mythical chariots of the gods. The texts actually provide precise details on their construction, their propulsion systems, often described as using mercury vortex engines, and their flight capabilities including, believe it or not, interstellar travel. The descriptions are so technical they could almost be blueprints. But the technology described isn't limited to just peaceful transport. The texts recount a great war, the Kurukshetra War, fought with weapons that are eerily familiar to our modern sensibilities and honestly, some that are far beyond them. They speak of the Brahmastra, a weapon that could destroy entire armies, leaving the land barren and its people sterile for generations. They describe an iron thunderbolt, a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, creating an incandescent column of smoke and fire, brighter than 1,000 suns. This is not poetry or metaphor. This is in fact an eyewitness account of a nuclear-level conflict. The descriptions of the aftermath are chillingly precise. Winds that carried death, water that boiled, hair and nails falling out, food becoming poisoned. These are unmistakably the classic symptoms of radiation poisoning. For years, these stories were dismissed as fantasy. But what if they are a historical record of a real war, fought by a civilization that possessed quantum weapons thousands of years before Oppenheimer? The evidence is not just literary, it's etched into the very land itself. In places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, ancient cities of the Indus Valley civilization, archaeologists have found skeletons scattered in the streets, unburied, as if a sudden terrible doom befell them. Some of these skeletons have radiation levels 50 times higher than normal. In the ruins, sections of vitrified clay and rock have been discovered, sand and stone fused into glass, a phenomenon that can only be explained by exposure to extreme heat, in excess of 1500 degrees Celsius, the kind of heat generated by an atomic explosion. The secret of ancient India is that it was the theater of a devastating high-tech war that erased a civilization far more advanced than our own. This was not a primitive tribal conflict fought with swords and arrows. It was a war fought between factions of gods or highly advanced humans, wielding weapons of cosmic power. The Vedic texts are the surviving records of this forgotten age of technological marvels and terrifying destruction. This lost chapter of history explains the cyclical nature of time in Hindu cosmology, the yugas. They understood that civilizations rise and fall, that knowledge is gained and then catastrophically lost. The radioactive ruins and the detailed accounts of Vimanas and Astras are a stark warning left by our ancestors. They reached a level of technological power that they could not wisely control, and it led to their self-destruction. Their story is a cautionary tale, a message across the millennia that technological power without spiritual wisdom is, in the end, the path to ruin. In the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean lies the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. It's famous for one thing, the Moai, nearly 900 colossal stone statues standing in silent vigil, their backs to the sea. The official story is that a small primitive Polynesian population carved and moved these massive figures using logs and ropes, then deforested their island and starved themselves into oblivion. But honestly, this narrative is not just simplistic, it's a deliberate misdirection. It ignores the profound science encoded into these silent giants. The first clue is the sheer impossibility of the task. How could a tiny isolated population, without wheels or heavy machinery, quarry, carve and transport statues weighing up to 86 tons for miles across rugged terrain? The local oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people tell a different story. They say the statues were not dragged, they walked. They were commanded by chiefs who possessed mana, a spiritual power to move into place using sound and vibration. This isn't just folklore, it's a memory of a lost technology of acoustic levitation. Furthermore, these statues are not just heads. Excavations have revealed that the Moai have full bodies, extending deep into the earth covered in intricate petroglyphs that have been protected from erosion. These carvings are not mere decorations, they are complex symbols and star maps. The statues themselves are made from basalt, a stone rich in magnetite, giving them unique electromagnetic properties. They were designed as resonant antennae, tuned to specific frequencies. The placement of the Moai and their ceremonial platforms, the AHU, is not random. They align with solstices, equinoxes, and specific constellations. But their true purpose is even grander. They are nodes in a planetary grid, just like the pyramids and obelisks of Egypt. They were designed to absorb and transmit telluric and cosmic energies, using sound and vibration to stabilize the Earth's energetic field. The Moai are silent guardians, not of a small island but of the entire planet. But Easter Island was not always so isolated. It is a mountain peak, a surviving remnant of a much larger landmass that subsided into the ocean. It was an outpost of a lost Pacific continent known to esoteric traditions as Lemuria or Mu. While Atlantis was the center of technological and material science in the Atlantic, Lemuria was its spiritual counterpart in the Pacific, a civilization that focused on developing consciousness, telepathy, and a harmonious relationship with nature. The secret of Easter Island is that it is a monument to this lost motherland of Lemuria. The civilization of Mu was not based on machines but on the power of the mind and spirit. They understood the interconnectedness of all life and communicated telepathically. Their technology was organic, based on sacred geometry, sound healing, and a deep understanding of the Earth's living energy system. The Moai were their instruments, their legacy. They are sonic devices, encoded with the knowledge and spiritual frequency of this peaceful, heart-centered civilization. When their continent sank in a great cataclysm, long before the one that took Atlantis, the survivors scattered, becoming the ancestors of the Polynesians, Native Americans, and other indigenous peoples. They carried with them the memory of Hiva, the sunken homeland. Easter Island was left as an eternal beacon, a frequency holder, ensuring that the spiritual wisdom of Lemuria would not be entirely lost, waiting for a future generation, our generation, to rediscover how to listen to the stones and hear their ancient song. We now turn to a mystery that is not buried in the distant past but hidden in plain sight all around us. A civilization so vast, so advanced, and so recent that its erasure from our history books represents perhaps the greatest deception of all. I'm talking about the worldwide civilization known as Great Tartaria. Old maps from before the 19th century clearly show it, a massive empire stretching across Siberia, Central Asia, and even the Americas. Yet today, official history is completely silent. It's as if it never existed. But the evidence of Tartaria is everywhere, in the very architecture of our oldest and grandest cities. Look at the magnificent old-world buildings found on every continent, the ornate city halls, post offices, cathedrals, and state capitals. We are told they were built in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries by men with horse-drawn carriages and primitive tools. But the scale, the symmetry, and the sheer technological sophistication of these structures defy that explanation. They are all built in a similar grand style with soaring domes, majestic columns, and intricate facades. This architecture was not just for beauty, it was functional. These buildings were components of a global atmospheric energy system. The domes, often topped with metal spires and antennae, ether antennae, were designed to harvest free energy from the ether. The intricate metalwork, the rose windows, and the pipe organs were not merely decorative. They were tuning devices, using sacred geometry and frequency to create fields of harmonious energy for healing, growth, and power. This was the lost Tartarian technology. This global super-civilization was peaceful, prosperous, and united. They had mastered free energy, eliminating the need for war over resources. Their society was built on principles of harmony, beauty, and cooperation. So what happened to them? Why have they been so thoroughly wiped from our collective memory? The clues point to a cataclysmic event in the early 1800s, an event that has been deliberately mislabeled and covered up. This event is sometimes referred to as the Mud Flood. All over the world we find these grand Tartarian buildings with their ground floors buried deep underground. Doors and windows open to nowhere, several feet below the modern street level. The official explanation is that cities simply sank or that street levels were raised. But the evidence suggests a single, massive, global deluge of mud and soil that buried their world, wiping out the population and destroying their infrastructure. The secret of Tartaria is that it was the last great civilization of the old world, and it was deliberately erased from history after this reset event. The few survivors were left in a state of amnesia, and a new group of controllers, a parasitic elite, took over. They rewrote history, claimed the surviving Tartarian buildings as their own, and introduced a new economic system based on scarcity, debt, and fossil fuels. They created orphanages to re-educate the surviving children, and invented a false history to cement their control. The great world's fairs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were not celebrations of new architecture. They were the final showcasing and subsequent demolition of the last remaining Tartarian cities, presented to a clueless public as temporary exhibits. The architecture we call neoclassical, Beaux Arts, or Renaissance Revival is, in fact, the stolen architectural style of Tartaria. We live among the ruins of a majestic, free energy empire convinced that they are the products of our own recent primitive past. Our quest now takes us deep into the jungles of Central America, to the abandoned cities of the Maya. For decades, archaeologists have portrayed the Maya as a bloodthirsty culture obsessed with human sacrifice, whose civilization mysteriously collapsed. This is a gross caricature that serves to obscure a much deeper truth. The Maya were not simply skilled astronomers, they were masters of time itself. They were chrononauts, time engineers, who understood that time is not a linear arrow, but a cyclical, multi-layered and conscious phenomenon. Their famous calendar system is far more than a simple method for tracking days. The long count calendar, the Tzolk'in, the Hab, these are not separate systems but interlocking gears in a cosmic clock. They track the cycles of the Sun, the Moon, Venus, the Pleiades, and even the 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes. But they were tracking more than just celestial bodies, they were tracking the flow of cosmic energies, the ebbs and flows of creation itself. They understood that each day, each cycle carried a unique energetic signature. The pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tikal are not just temples, they are temporal observatories, precision instruments designed to anchor and amplify these cosmic energies onto the Earth. The Pyramid of Kukulkan, for example, is a physical manifestation of the calendar. Its steps, platforms and panels correspond to the days, months and cycles of the year. During the equinoxes, the play of light and shadow creates the image of a serpent descending the pyramid staircase, a stunning display of their ability to engineer physical reality to align with celestial time. This deep understanding of time was not for agricultural purposes alone. The Maya used it for a far more profound purpose, to navigate consciousness through reality. They understood that by aligning human consciousness with specific points in these vast cosmic cycles, through ritual, meditation and planetary alignments, one could influence reality and even transcend it. They were not just predicting the future, they were actively participating in its creation. So what happened to the Maya? Why were their magnificent cities found abandoned, as if the inhabitants simply walked away one day? The mainstream narrative of collapse due to drought or warfare is a convenient fiction. The truth is far more extraordinary. The Maya didn't collapse, they left. They achieved their ultimate goal. The secret of the Maya is that they didn't disappear, they ascended. Using their mastery of time, frequency and consciousness, they orchestrated their civilization's departure from this physical plane. At a specific, carefully chosen moment in the cosmic cycle, a moment of immense energetic convergence, they performed a mass ritual. This ritual was designed to collectively raise their vibrational frequency to a point where they could shift into a higher dimension of existence. They literally timed their exit. They used their pyramids as tuning forks and their calendar as a key to unlock a dimensional doorway. They are not dead. They have simply moved to a different reality, a higher octave of being, leaving their stone cities behind as a roadmap for those who would follow. Their legacy is a message that time is not a prison, but a vehicle. They left us the knowledge that if we can align ourselves with the cosmic rhythms, we too can unlock the doors of perception and transcend the limitations of this physical world. For our final destination, we travel back, far back in time, to a place that shatters the official timeline of human history. In the hills of southeastern Turkey lies a site so ancient and so sophisticated that it has sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, Göbekli Tepe. Dated to at least 12,000 years old, it predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by 7,000 years. This is not a collection of primitive huts. It is the world's first known temple complex, and it was built by so-called primitive hunter-gatherers. The official story tells us that agriculture led to settlements, which then led to religion and temple building. Göbekli Tepe flips that entire paradigm on its head. Here we have a massive, complex ceremonial center built by a pre-agricultural society. This suggests that it was a shared spiritual belief, a collective cosmology, that brought people together first, inspiring them to achieve incredible engineering feats. The need to build this temple may have been the very catalyst for the invention of agriculture itself, to feed the workers. The site consists of multiple circular enclosures, each containing massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 16 tons. These pillars are not crude monoliths. They are elegantly carved with breathtakingly detailed reliefs of animals, foxes, boars, snakes, and vultures. But these are not just pictures of animals. They are complex symbols, constellations. The Vulture Stone, for example, has been identified by researchers as an astronomical map, a snapshot of the sky showing the constellations as they would have appeared around 10,950 BC, a date that coincides precisely with the Younger Dryas climate cataclysm. These pillars are anthropomorphic, stylized representations of human figures with hands carved on their sides. They are not gods, but perhaps representations of the builders or shamanic figures. The entire complex is a precise astronomical observatory, aligned to track celestial events with incredible accuracy. But its purpose goes far beyond simply watching the stars. This was a place of power, a place designed to interact with the forces of the cosmos. What kind of society could have conceived of and built such a place 12,000 years ago? This was the work of the survivors of the great cataclysm that destroyed the previous global civilization, the culture of Atlantis. They were the keepers of the old knowledge, and Göbekli Tepe was their first great act of rebuilding. It was an attempt to re-establish the planetary grid, to reconnect with the cosmic energies after the devastation. It was a machine for memory, a way to record the cataclysmic event in stone for future generations. But the greatest mystery of Göbekli Tepe is not how it was built, but why it was buried. Around 8,000 BC, after centuries of use, its creators deliberately and painstakingly buried the entire complex under tons of earth, preserving it perfectly for millennia. Why would they bury their most sacred site? This was not an act of abandonment, it was an act of preservation. They were hiding it, protecting it. The secret of Göbekli Tepe is that it was far more than a temple. It was an active portal, a frequency device designed to interface with other dimensions and perhaps communicate with non-human intelligences. When the cosmic energy shifted and the world became more hostile, its creators buried it to protect its powerful secrets from falling into the wrong hands. They put it to sleep, creating a time capsule of pre-cataclysmic knowledge, waiting for a time when humanity would be ready to rediscover it and understand its true purpose. That time is now. We have journeyed across the globe and through the mists of time, from the sunken cities of Atlantis to the buried portals of Göbekli Tepe. We've seen that each of these civilizations possessed a piece of a profound and powerful truth. And now, the final, overarching secret can be revealed. These were not isolated cultures stumbling in the dark. They were all connected: Atlantis, Egypt, Sumeria, India, Lemuria, Tartaria, the Maya. They were all nodes in a single, ancient global network, a civilization of unbelievable sophistication, a civilization guided by a higher intelligence. This network was powered by a planetary energy grid, a system of free, clean energy that harnessed the natural frequencies of the Earth and the cosmos. And it was overseen by beings who were not of this world, whether you call them the Anunnaki, the Shemsu Hor, or simply the gods of antiquity. Beings from the stars, from higher dimensions, or perhaps even from the inner realms of our own planet. They were our ancestors, our creators, and our teachers. They guided our evolution and left behind a legacy of science and spirituality that has been systematically hidden from us. But this knowledge was never truly lost. It was deliberately concealed, buried in stone, encoded in myth, and preserved by secret societies, waiting for the day when we, their descendants, would be ready to awaken. That time is now. The clues are all around us. The Great Pyramid is not a tomb, the Moai are not just statues, and our history is not what we have been told. We are a species with amnesia, standing on the brink of remembering a magnificent and powerful truth about ourselves. The task of our generation is to reclaim this lost heritage and in doing so, unlock our limitless potential. Hey, if you liked the video and enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos posted every Friday. Thanks for watching.